When the Shanghai Dragons won this past weekend, I know you were thinking the same thing that I was. How did the worst esports team in the world turn it all around? Well, the answer is more complicated than you might think. Obviously, the players were incredible, but the unsung heroes of the Shanghai Dragons' comeback were the coaching staff and the management. But sometimes esports fans are a little hesitant to give those behind-the-scenes forces their due. So, if you don't follow the Overwatch League, here's what happened this past weekend. The Shanghai Dragons, most famous for going completely winless in Season 1 of the league with an 0-40 record, defeated the New York Excelsior, the Vancouver Titans, and the San Francisco Shock to win the Season 2 Stage 3 playoffs. In English, the worst team in the history of esports beat 3 of the best teams in their league to win a championship. With literally zero context, this is already super impressive. Shanghai's 0-40 season is the stuff of legends. They are unquestionably the worst esports team of all time, and probably the worst professional sports team too. No matter how bad you think they were so much worse. Look, we literally made an entire video about how they managed to go completely winless during a season, so you can watch that for more info. But for now, all you really need to know is that they sucked. So bad. So their win this weekend is pretty crazy, right? Well, a lot of people were quick to point out that it wasn't as impressive as it seemed on paper, because the 6 players who won that championship this weekend weren't on the team at all during their winless season. Notably, Overwatch League caster Monte Cristo tweeted that he didn't want to hear any 0-40 to stage finals bullshit about the Shanghai Dragons run. Now, I understand what he's saying. He totally makes sense, and he gives the management their due, but I do think there is a storyline here. After all, the management had to put their trust in a new coach who put his trust in a new team and built strategies and synergies that these players could pull off to make it to the finals. Look, this is still an impressive feat. Obviously, the players played incredibly this weekend, but the coaching staff deserves their credit too. Look, I am not the world's foremost Overwatch analyst, but as far as I can tell, this all started in September of 2018, when the Dragons brought on Bluehost to be their new head coach, replacing a string of, let's say, controversial coaches. The team also dumped 8 of their 11 players, choosing to rebuild with a majority of the Kongdu Pantera roster, a Korean contenders team, and Bluehost's former team, along with DM from Lucky Future Zenith, and Gamsu, the former League of Legends pro and Boston Uprising tank. Shanghai had a slow start to the season, but Bluehost's roster slowly clicked as he learned each player's individual preferences. In a world dominated by GOATs, Bluehost and his assistant coach Levi chose to focus on coordination and those individual synergies between their players. For example, Shanghai quickly became known for breaking the meta. They were one of the first teams to run Sombra alongside GOATs, which is now standard, and they were early to the triple DPS comp, which has become pretty standard as well in the OWL meta. Bluehost and Levi were great at finding out what their players were individually good at and getting the rest of their players to coordinate around those strengths. There's a lot of super complicated meta stuff that we don't really need to get into, like how Gamsu gets less resources than some other tanks in the league, or how Ding and DM use Pharah and Widowmaker to herd their opponents into specific parts of the map. But the point is that the coaching and management staff took a bunch of contenders level players and turned them into a championship team. Also, they played Doomfist, which I think is pretty cool. Obviously, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Coaching and management are important parts of any esport team's success. Cloud9's roster swap in League of Legends last year, where they temporarily benched a bunch of their superstars in favor of players from their academy team, is a perfect example of this. They went from last in the standings to worlds. Obviously, all the individual pieces were great in that team, but it took a clever coach like Reaper to put them all together and motivate them to win. Meanwhile, fans are willing to write off a team as being completely different when only the roster or even some members of the roster have changed. Look, when the majority or even the entire roster leaves your favorite team, the identity of that team is going to change. But management is still there, and even if they've brought in a new coach, they're still the same franchise, and you see that in sports all the time. You see this kind of sentiment all the time in esports. When a majority of the roster, or even the entire roster changes, people are willing to say it's not the same team anymore. But in a franchise system, I just don't think that makes sense. Look, I literally don't know anything about sports, but smart people who do know about sports tell me that this kind of thing happens all the time there and is celebrated. 2015-2016 Leicester City, the 09 Celtics, or even the Raptors this past year, who dumped their coach who was named Coach of the Year and their franchise player in favor of a new coach and a hired gun and won a championship. That kind of savvy management, good coaching, and knowledge to acquire good players who synergize with the rest of your team is celebrated all the time in sports. People literally make it into the Hall of Fame for being builders. And look, I know that coaches are celebrated in esports, but often not to the same degree that I think they should be. I know the Shanghai Dragons who won Stage 3 this weekend aren't the Shanghai Dragons that went 0-40 last year, but that's the point. The management didn't want them to be. So they picked up coaches who they thought could turn the franchise around. And those coaches handpicked a roster that they thought could win a championship and molded them into a team that could beat the very best. I don't know. I still think that's a pretty incredible storyline.
Thanks for watching. If you want more content like this, hit the sub button and ring that notification bell. For unique bite-sized videos you won't find anywhere else, hit up our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook pages.